Hey guys, what's up? It is week 214. Don't have any updates for you, just have some questions, comments, concerns, all that stuff, and of course some reviews. So let's hop into this. So I was interested in this one back when it came out in 2012. Somehow I missed it, didn't see it. It's kind of a bummer, but hey, I'm finally catching up now. And this is The Sleeper. And this was kind of like big in the early like aughts, aught tens or whatever the fuck you want to call them. There was like a big renaissance of doing 80s, and the 80s stuff is still coming back, right? There's still a lot of people doing the 80s style. It's very popular. The 80s never really died out in terms of entertainment and memorabilia, all that kind of stuff. So this one is a sleeper from 2012, and this is made by the director of I think Death Stop Holocaust, which is actually I remember a pretty kind of solid throwback to 70s grindhouse, Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of murderous backwoods family stuff, if I remember. It's been a while. So what this one here is a sleeper. Now this is put out by what is it? No, this is I believe it is. Oh geez, it's Scream Team releasing, which put out a lot of decent stuff, and they do a lot of indie movies and everything like this. And this is one of their first kind of releases there. So, Sleeper. Okay, so this is a throwback to 1981, or does it take place in 79 originally, and then it jumps to 81, if I'm not mistaken, which is perfect, because, of course, I'm doing 1981 as we speak, and seeing a lot of slasher films. Now, right off the bat, the first one I noticed this to is mostly likely Black Christmas, It tries to do that formula where we have, like, the sorority girls, and it has, it tries to establish decent characters. Sometimes they don't always work, they're not horrible, but they're at least attempting to establish characters, which is more than a lot of, kind of throwbacks would do. Or sometimes a lot of the throwbacks are so letting you know that hitting you over the head like this is like the 80s, right? This one doesn't do it too bad. I think that it's fairly legit, or tries to be legit, like it depending on how successful it is. So what happens here is we have a mad slasher, and it's not really kind of a mystery who the killer is. It doesn't kind of do that deal, but he makes phone calls, and every time he makes a phone call, that person ends up kaput. And what I'll say about this is the kill count is really high. I think it's in the double digits, and a lot of slasher films don't really ever get that high in kill counts. There's a handful, I believe Friday the 13th Part 4 probably does, and there's a couple that get ridiculous. Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 have really high body counts, but this one, it's pretty high, and they're all fairly established characters except a couple. So of course there's a cop kind of angle at it, which this again what reminds me of Black Christmas, right? Because in that one we have John Sachs and the other cops, and kind of spend a lot of time with them, kind of being involved with the girls who are being threatened. And there's whole, of course, like a pledge thing going on. The main character and her friend are attempting to pledge to the sorority, and they have a kind of a butting of heads and ideology and stuff like that. But they are taking their time to establish some of the characters by doing this, and they do a decent job. The look of it is good too. You got to think this movie is made on a budget, and looking at his other film, I remember that one kind of capturing that stuff as well. Now I hope I'm not a complete idiot, and I'm completely wrong about this. I hope I'm not wrong about Death Stop Holocaust, but I remember digging that one, right? So like I'm looking at this, and like there's some things I really like, some things I don't care for, and that's mostly just the acting ranges. Some is pretty solid, some is indie acting, and that's a wide variety what you're going to get here, and that can always be ascertained to maybe they had to ADR it, maybe this dialogue wasn't as well written for this character. It ranges, and I don't like picking out certain actors unless it's a huge movie or something like that, or somebody was egregiously bad or something. So gregarious. Wait a minute, Dave, you're not that smart. Stop using big words. But so you know what I mean. Anyways, the killer in the film is genuinely scary. He's always saying stuff like "good night," "go to bed," "go to sleep," that kind of thing. He has this weird obsession with putting people to sleep. Obviously. But his eyes, he almost has like the blind eyes, the beyond eyes, the sentinel eyes, those blue kind of pale, I've seen some shit kind of that haunted me and changed me eyes. And that's a nice touch to it. There is some nudity, as you would expect to an 80s throwback slasher. More you would expect the nudity more in a throwback than you would sometimes in the actual movies themselves back from the 80s. But yeah, and the special effects are solid, and the kill count's high, and they establish characters, and they wipe a lot of them out, if not almost all all of them. So I would recommend The Sleeper. I thought this was pretty solid, pretty entertaining stuff. Well done, made on a budget too. So I don't know if this guy says what Ty West did. Oh, I know that guy, Jason High-Night. He's a good guy. Work with Jason. So what Ty West did for the 70s, Justin Russell has done for the 80s. Those are bold statements. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it is indeed something that you should check out, especially if you like slashers. I don't love the movie. I like it. I think it's pretty solid, but yeah, I think it's more like Black Christmas than the 80s slashers, and that's 74, but it does have some of the tinge too. Maybe like Storm That Drip Blood is in there. Pledge Night was late 80s, right? 89. That movie's ridiculous. I'm thinking of Pledge slasher things. There's one made probably around this time too called Frat House Massacre, maybe a little before, that Synapse put out. And that was a lot of fun. Now, a lot of times when I'm referencing movies I haven't watched that were from this time era that I haven't watched in 15, 20 years, sometimes stuff doesn't hold up. But maybe watch this with Frat House Massacre, a double feature, and get back at me on The Sleeper. There's some special features here. Director's commentary, Shooting a Nightmare in 13 Days, hour-long featurette, theatrical trailers, Joe Bob's Drive-In Total. And Joe Bob does have a cameo. Lost Trailer Series, Don't Go in the Attic, motion menus, and chapter selections. So check it out. This is a Blu-ray DVD combo. Okay, this next one here is from Radiance Films, and they've been making a name for themselves, putting out a lot of good quality stuff. And this is Yakuza Graveyard, and not to be confused with Yakuza Law, and this director's other work. This director here, I'm going to make sure I say his name right, Kinji Fukasaku. And what's funny is he's actually one of the directors I probably cover the most on my channel. He did the Battles Without Honor and Humanity, the new Battles Without Honors and Humanity, Cops vs. Thugs, tons of these kind of, Yakuza 70s movies that have that gritty kind of great look to them that were pretty influential on later day films, especially other Yakuza movies from Japan. But I just love how 70s Japanese movies look, or even early 80s. Hell, they look great up until like the early 2000s. Japan for some reason didn't follow until maybe some of the direct-to-video stuff looked a little shaky, but I like that stuff too. Japan's like look of their film seemed to stay that way for a longer time, but it's different studios, and the big major ones like Toei and Toho and stuff like this. I believe this is a Toei, and I don't want to mess that up, but so 1976, and I hadn't watched one of these in a while. They put out another one recently, Big Gambling Boss, another Yakuza flick, and that was really good. So Radiance Films is kind of cherry picking these Japanese Yakuza films and putting them out. So this one I think I dug more than Big Gambling Boss, maybe around the same. Maybe they're about the same quality of film, but this one's more up my alley. So we're following this cop who has ties with the Yakuza, and he's a violent cop. He's had some like incidents where he shot a Yakuza, a person, and maybe rightfully so, maybe not. His superiors weren't happy with it, is what you kind of get. And this guy is kind of mingling in with these different crime families. And what we find out is like in Japan, in this film at least, the cops are in direct connection with the crime families, and they want to keep peace. They don't want a crime war. So they're kind of in constant communication. A lot of the cops are in these different families' pockets. It's very complicated. It's very different, right? So there's that kind of thing going on all the time with the cops and everything. And the lead guy here, the lead character, he starts to get involved with a certain gang. After he beats up somebody, he gets involved with this like kind of pit boss that's a real bruiser, and they have a couple run-ins. But what eventually happens is he falls for an imprisoned gang member's or kind of like sub-boss's wife. And they start to hang out and just develop this bond. They get drunk together. And this cop starts spiraling out of control. At one point, he gets called into his superiors. And the superiors are literally going off a list of things that he did. And you're just like, yeah, you're not registering how much of the shit he broke, a law and like conduct and all this stuff. And you're like, I guess he did do all that shit. It's pretty intense. So like he's literally getting in trouble for all this shit, and you're just like, it's just gonna come to a bad end. But what I really liked about this was there's a good thing that they show loyalty and brotherhood within the Yakuza, how they've signed and they go together and all that stuff, and that worked really well. And the ending, it's pretty powerful. And again, it's funny, like within the police, within the crime families, there's bureaucracy and bullshit, and not everyone has to follow the same rules. That's very much a theme in a lot of movies that feel like they're almost male driven in the 70s, right? Like I said, I just talked about Convoy Busters, where you're just kind of fucking stuck. Or even if you look at Cross of Iron, it's bureaucracy everywhere you look, in the police department, in the crime families, in war. It's just a lot of red tape, a lot of shit, a lot of people not having to follow the same rules. And that's just kind of a 70s thing in general. Well, it's everywhere. It's been forever, but 70s kind of tackled a lot of movies like this. So Yakuza, Yakuza Graveyard. So like this character in here, the lead guy is in a bunch of these movies. You'd recognize him. And there's some really great fights. There's shootouts. Of course, those crowded street shootouts where they have the headlines cut, slam. This is very much like the new Battles Without Honor and Humanity. And it also stars Lady Snowblood herself as, the kind of love interest. But she's a really unique character. There's a point where she gets intoxicated and she kind of spills her guts who she is. You find out who she is. She's half Korean and she just doesn't belong anywhere. And that's like a lovely... There's a lot of good character moments in here that characters just kind of spew their guts out, these kind of monologues, and I guess they would be exposition, but they don't feel like it. They feel like genuinely great character moments. And this is a really solid film. It looked good. It sounded good. Yakuza Graveyard. There's features on here as well. We have appreciation by filmmaker Kazuga Shirashi, The Blood of the Wolves and The Rage of Passion, a new video essay. That's the director who did that. But then we have A Rage of the Passion, a new visual essay by Tom Mez on Miko Kaju and Kinji Fukasaku's collaboration. So we kind of talk about the films that they did together. I think there's like 3 or 4 at the very least. And then we have commissioned artwork by Tomorrow. So yeah, anyways, happy with this release. A good flick. I would recommend checking it out for sure. Okay, the next one here is an Arrow video, and this is Warriors 2. And this is the second film that Sammo Hung directed, and this is for Golden Harvest, of course. Now, Sammo Hung, if you guys don't know him, he's directed a bunch of martial arts films. He stars in a bunch of martial arts films. He's kind of a national treasure, a big deal in Hong Kong, a big guy, very flexible, does a lot of stuff, and he's well respected. He's well beloved in here. So, essentially what we have here is, he's not the main star, but he's supporting, one of the main stars, but it's called Warriors 2. So we have this character who gets unveils a murder plot, basically, of a mayor, and he's trying to stop it, and the mayor is killed, and he is the only witness, so he has to go in hiding. He's hurt, he's badly damaged and everything like that. So during his recovery, he is taken in by kind of a master, if you will. It's very typical, somebody that knows a special martial artist. And this master basically tells him, I'll protect you, and he protects him against the evil guy trying to, take over the town and village and his goons. One of the main goons are one with a spear, one who has some sort of like iron chest, and one, I don't necessarily know the other one's power, but he's got long hair, and they're all just mean bruisers, you typical kind of, villains in these, kung fu movies. So what happens is he basically somehow tricks this master into teaching him. He didn't want to teach him for revenge, obviously for protection, but this master ends up teaching him along with, Sammo Hung and a couple other students. And what happens is Sammo Hung's kind of a local kind of goofball, always getting ripped off, trying to sell fish in the market, fish balls. It's just kind of a goofy, kind of laughable character. But he's also a badass, which is kind of Sammo Hung's MO, right? He's kind of like your lovable goof that can whoop your ass at the same time, but he's going to take a couple bumps on the way. So basically what happens is these villains keep hyper-focusing on this guy, and over many, many training sessions, he actually starts to get it down along with Sammo Hung and, the niece, I would imagine. But then when you talk about Asian films, they call everybody uncle. It's more of a sense of respect. But I actually think that this is her uncle in this one. And they're all just like kind of karate masters or kung fu masters. I shouldn't say karate. Karate is Japanese, if I'm not mistaken, and this is not. So basically the villains attack, of course, and there's going to be even some more revenge, right? So they make this elaborate plan, and I won't go into complete details. It's not super elaborate, but it's very run of the mill. But there's one part of the plan, because we have these multiple different fight scenes because of it. There's one that takes place with Sammo Hung and the spearman in the woods, and that's the best fight scene in the movie, because so much often do you see these take place in inns, kind of like a throwback to the classic bar fights, like John Ford bar fights or whatever you would say in classic westerns. They're usually in like this inn or a restaurant. There's always breaking like glass bottles and tables, and it's very typical, right, of almost any movie. But this time what we have here is in the forest, in a kung fu movie, in the dark forest. So there's like a sense of suspense for sure. But of course, the hero's going to fight back, and surprisingly, people die, And it ends on like a silly note, like, knee slapper. But, it is a lot of consequences in this one. A lot of characters do bite it. A couple at times where you're like, oh shit, I didn't know that person was going to die. I didn't know that person was going to die either. A couple of them for sure. But yeah, this is a good film. I mean, I don't think I've seen a bad Sammo Hung movie, directed or starring. But as far as the special features are concerned, there's 2 cuts on here. We have, of course, the shorter export cut, and then we have the HK theatrical cut. The difference is 5 minutes. We have multiple different languages here. English mono for the export cut, 2 choices of English dub audio for the theatrical cut, the original export dub mono with Cantonese patches for missing scenes, and the newer 5.1 dub created for international DVD presentations. And then we have subtitles for the HK cut and English subtitles for deaf and hearing of the export cut. Commentary in the HK theatrical cut by martial arts expert, cinema expert Frank Jin, and actor Bobby Samuels. Now, Bobby Samuels knew Sammo Hung. He helped him out in Hong Kong a lot. He's an African-American guy, and being in Hong Kong, he had an interesting look at, I believe he's American born, but he had an interesting look at, the film scene from his point of view and meeting Sammo and everything like that. So then we also have a commentary and export cut by action cinema experts Michael Eder and Arnie Venema. Our archival documentary, The Way of the Warrior, Making Warriors 2, featuring interviews with stars Sammo Hung, Brian Beardy, Kar Wai, Fang Hawk Ah, Casanova Wong, and Wing Chung, master of Gai Lao. Archival interview with Brian Beardy, original theatrical trailers, double-sided fold-out poster, a whole bunch of stuff here. So yeah, enjoyable movie. I don't think that anybody that dislikes, that likes Sammo Hung would dislike this one. Not my favorite, but still a good one, and a good addition from Arrow. Good stuff. Okay, the next one here is an Irish film, right? We don't see too many Irish horror films. There is a handful, though. And this is Unwelcome from Wellgo USA. And this is out on Blu-ray, I think, today. It should be out already by the time you're seeing this, and for streaming. So, yeah, this one right here, I did not know much about, except this is definitely going to catch anybody's attention. I bet it was saying this. Like, on the back, it was saying, Gremlins meet Straw Dogs. And I'm like, that is an interesting combo. I love Straw Dogs. I really like Gremlins. I love little creatures. This is totally up my alley. This is definitely made for me. So I was like, but that mixture, does it seem right? Straw Dogs meets Gremlins. Let's find out. So what we have here is a young couple. The woman is pregnant. They're struggling in kind of a really terrible place here. A really crumdum kind of area in England. And their lives are threatened. The husband seems he's useless. He's worthless. And the wife gets a better hand on one of them, but can't pull the trigger. And so there's this sense of helplessness, sense of not being able to put yourself there, and that's going to be obviously something that comes in later, right? Any horror movie now, somebody has to have a trauma that they have to face, like The Ritual. What was that one? You have to have the face, and a lot of the movies will put the trauma in the very beginning, right? The Ritual does it, and this one kind of follows the same kind of formula here, that there is obviously something there. Not in the beginning, but you see flashes to it, and it is alluded to earlier this time, so we see it right off the bat. What happens is they have a family member die. They inherit this strange house in Ireland among this small town, and everyone seems pretty nice, really nice, way nicer than the people that you saw in the city. So they're kind of relieved, but there's some weird superstitious stuff going on, as all small towns seem to have in horror films. And they basically tell her, you need to feed the little people, the red caps, or they're going to be pissed and they're going to find food elsewhere. So she thinks it's a little silly, but she says she'll do it out of respect. And we kind of learn that these red caps are not a myth pretty quick in the movie when local drunk is attacked, and you kind of see him in the shadows and everything like that. But they hire the local family of kind of criminals, low rent kind of criminals, kind of like, I don't want to call them criminals necessarily, the kids are, and it's a father and 3 kids, and the father's played by Cole Meadley. You'll see him in Under Siege 2, he's in Con Air, he's in a lot of movies. Call me daddy, that's what he says. He wants everybody to call him daddy, which I think is really good character trait. So right away they kind of clash heads, these two, this couple and this family. They're just not from the same world. They don't have the same principles. The son is a criminal. The daughter and the son smoke weed right in the open, steal their food, all sorts of stuff. And there's one that's kind of a dullard, kind of slow, and he's very big. And what happens is, they start to have like rising, tensions amongst each other. And again, the husband is just kind of a pushover. And this is the theme in the movie for sure. And at one point, something tragic happens, and she calls on the Red Caps to help her. And you know what? They do. And we kind of have this whole xenophobic kind of thing, this city versus country folks, and thrown in for good measure are some Gremlin-esque characters. Now they are CGI, but they are mixed with practical, and for the most part I think they work really well. Hell, how many different movies do you get to see a little creature movie like this? I thought it was pretty entertaining. Gory as shit. Very gory. Somebody, I don't want to spoil it, but somebody takes a real nasty gun wound, and it was excellent. And yeah, the characters get fucked up. It's bloody, it's gory, it's worth your time, and the ending is pretty insane, and maybe even some woman power, maybe possibly there. But I thought Unwelcome was pretty damn good, honestly. I would recommend checking this one out. I'd probably give it almost 7.5, somewhere around there out of 10. New horror movies, I haven't had that much luck with a lot of them. I haven't hated that many, but I think this and Candyland are probably I'd have to look at the list. Are maybe probably my favorites of the year so far. I'm not sure. But Candyland I really like. That's totally made for me. But Unwelcome, check it out from Wellgo. There's some deleted scenes, bonus features, behind the scenes, making the red caps. That was a cool one. I did watch that. They kind of made all the different little faces and everything like that. And they're funny, too. They can be funny in kind of a weird way. Like, no. But they're ugly as shit, too. So, yeah, this is fun. I wish they were all practical, but hey, it is what it is, man. You're lucky you get stuff like this at all anymore. Okay, the next one, I'll be kind of brief with it. Probably going to discuss this at one point on the summer series from the 60s. And this is 1961. Roger Corman directed, Roger Corman produced, Vincent Price starring, The Pit and the Pendulum. Yeah, and this is from the first set here. So basically, I was looking back and I was like, I've seen The Haunted Palace. I've seen, House of Usher. I've seen The Mask of the Red Death. I've seen a bunch of the Corman Poe movies. And I'm like, Twice Told Tales of Terror. And I was like, did I see Pit and the Pendulum? I'm not sure I did, and I saw the 91 one by Stuart Gordon and really liked that movie, although that mixes in the Spanish conquistadores torture aspect, which I like. This one is different. I mean, it stars Vincent Price as, what the hell is his name in this movie? I can't believe I'm going to forget it. But, so essentially his wife died, played by Barbara fucking Steele of all people, a year after Black Sunday, so Mask of Satan by Mario Bava, so that's pretty damn cool. Basically his wife died, and he's haunted, he's tormented, he's tortured. His sister lives there as well with him, or she kind of in and out of the house, and there's a doctor that kind of frequents that's a family friend. So the brother of, his brother-in-law shows up, and, we never met. I want to see the body. I want to see the grave. And she says, well, the body is in the house. It's in a tomb in the house. And the brother starts pushing really hard for information. He's like, wasn't I informed right away? And then the farther he pushes, some kind of cracks or exposition stories kind of come out. We learn that, Vincent Price comes from a long line of monsters, or just his father was a monster. He used to torture people, right? And as you find out, there was obviously some marital problems, and all this kind of stuff comes to a head. And strange things start to happen around the castle, right? Haunting, somebody's moving, and you think it's a killer. Who is it? Is it a ghost? Are they being haunted by Barbara Steele? And of course, there is some twists and some reveals that are really well done. Vincent Price gets to completely lose his mind, and that's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to watch Vincent Price anyways, let's be honest, but he's good in this. He's pretty crazy in it and entertaining. Just really well done. Barbara Steele, the little bit she's in here, she's really good as well. I mean, she's very stunning to look at, very unique, kind of a one-of-a-kind looking person. And then you have other people as well that I was fine with, but really the sister is really good, and the flashback stuff is great too. So the torture, the Pit and the Pendulum itself is really, really cool. So yeah, I enjoy this one. Price gets to play two different roles and kind of have two states of mind in one of the roles. And I love the opening. It's very trippy and very weird, right? It's got that like weird trippy style, like the weird kind of the credits or whatever. Hell, they're still doing credits like that on AIP pictures to like 1970 with the Dunwich Horrors. It's like they might have been like, there, we got a hit. And there's an introduction by Vincent Price as well, and there's a deleted opening. There's a scene that was probably used for some different versions of, Poe's and Price's sister being in like the insane asylum or something like that. And I don't know if it's really necessarily or really works, but I enjoyed this one. It's directed by Corman. It is The Pit and the Pendulum. Okay, guys, let's hop into those 1981 movies.
Woe be unto him who opens one of the 7 gateways to hell, because through that gateway, evil will invade the world.
say on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on and on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. In this little town, when the 14th comes round, there's a silence and fear in the air. Remember the morn that the legend was born, all the shock and the horror was there. Oh, the legend, they say, on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. And no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago.
Okay, the first one up is a banger. And this is another werewolf movie from 1981 that's not The Howling, an American Werewolf in London, or even Wolfen. Not a werewolf movie. Or even, or even Full Moon High. This is directed by Paul Naschy, and it's one of the later days, kind of like towards the end of like the major cycle he did of the Vladimir Dędzinski werewolf movies from Spain. Now, this is the first one he directed of this series. Paul Naschy was an actor, a Spanish actor. That's not his real name. His real name is Molina, if I'm not mistaken. I always forget his real name. But anyways, Paul Naschy was a famous Spanish horror director and actor. He was kind of like their answer to Lon Chaney Jr. He played all the monsters he could. He played a Frankenstein monster, a vampire, a werewolf over 9 times. He played Dr. Jekyll, and he plays like 8 of them in Howl the Devil. So Paul Naschy is kind of like a horror icon. Not kind of, he is a horror icon. He's one of the the most iconic Spanish horror person, right? So he got a chance to direct this one, and this is the first one he did direct out of the Vladimir Dędzinski series. Now there is a commentary on here with the guys from Naschy Cast, and they go over the history of these werewolf movies, the Lost One, all the way starting from 1968 and ending in like 2004 or something like that by a Fred Olen Ray directed one that they barely consider one of the official ones. But they go into this and they say it's a semi-remake of the 1971 one, Werewolf vs. the Vampire Girl. But yeah, so what we have here is basically Mask of Satan, Black Sunday, right in the beginning. I was like, this is gnarly. And it's 81. But what I love about Naschy's movies, even when they got in the later 70s and 80s and stuff like that, he always seemed to hold a love for the Hammer and Universal horror movies, that gothic stuff, which wasn't always in. It wasn't always prevalent in the 80s at all. It started to die out for sure. I mean, in the early 80s, you still have it there, here and there and stuff with the Hammer House of Horrors and other things too. But Naschy and he had a movie in 80 as well. Naschy had one, Human Beast. So like it's funny to see Naschy hold on to that, right? He kept holding on to that, like those themes and the gothic stuff, and they really work, honestly. So in the very beginning, we have this witch who is put to death. It's actually Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth Bathory, she bathed in the blood of virgins to stay young forever. There's a lot of great renditions of that, including another Spanish film called Legend of Blood Castle by Jorge Grau, and of course the Hammer version, Countess Dracula, which is really great. And they even do it in Hostel 2, right? A character bathes in the blood of a virgin. So this one, she's basically being put to death right in the very beginning, along with all her minions and her witch friends and her henchmen, and Vladimir Dędzinski, who is a cursed werewolf. So all these people are put down, and we see Vladimir put down in a brutal fashion, blood coming out of his mouth, a mask, of course, the Mask of Satan, put on his face, and he's dead. We have a witch years down the line, I don't remember how many years, modern time, I take it, coming to look, to basically on grave or get Elizabeth Bathory out of here and resurrect her. But when she does this, of course, she comes back. She's a vampire, and she starts, biting all the friends, turning everyone. And Vladimir Dędzinski wakes up, and of course, one of her ghouls wakes up. This kind of like big hulking, like armored kind of mummy skeleton thing. So right away they start to suck the blood of the village. Everyone is paranoid and scared, and it's it becomes kind of a werewolf versus a vampire kind of story here. There's some characters caught in between. The girl that works for Vladimir Denzhinsky with the burnt face is a great character, and he has a love for one of the characters that shows up, and there's all this kind of stuff, of course, with the true, only a true love can kill a werewolf kind of deal. You guys all know the Wolfman, where that originated from, right? That wasn't in original source material, if I'm not mistaken. That originated from, only a true person that loves you could kill you if you're a werewolf. So then we have all that stuff going on, and they got to say the gothic atmosphere is through the roof here. But what's great is he brings in all that gothic atmosphere, the crypts, the vampires, the people walking down with the candelabras or whatever the fuck they are down the hallways, and just beautiful women and badass people, all this kind of great stuff and visuals and stuff. But then on top of that, he adds in the sex and nudity from the 80s that you guys have grown accustomed to. So it's just like, it's kind of like, I know Hammer would mix that in too, but I was like, I really kind of enjoy these Naschy flicks just because you get everything you're looking for in a horror movie. I mean, I don't need nudity and gore to make a good horror movie, and you'll know that from the next one I'm going to talk about. But it can add in these kind of gothic movies. You're not always treated to that kind of stuff, so it's a weird mixture, and it's a pleasurable mixture. Naschy mixes them well. He has good cinematography, he has good score, good acting, good special effects, and good-looking people for the most part. So, anyways, Night of the Werewolf. I really enjoyed this one. The werewolf looks cool. He looks scary. I dig it. I would recommend checking out Night of the Werewolf. And the commentary on here is really good. The commentary by the Naschy cast. There's some deleted scenes as well. So check out Night of the Werewolf. One of my favorite ones for a first time watch this for 81. I should have seen it a long time ago. I've seen a good amount of Naschy movies, but I've not seen all the werewolf movies. Only a handful. I should really just watch them all. Okay, next up from 1981 is from John Irving, and this is Ghost Story. Now, Ghost Story, right here. It's been a long time since I watched this. This is based off a book by Peter Straub, and this is nearly 2 hours long. Has a bunch of classic actors in here, as well as Craig Watson from the year before he was in Schizoid. Yeah, that's right, Schizoid. And he's later go on to be in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. But the big names in here are, of course, Melvin Douglas from the previous year's The Changeling, classic actor, and that's great that he continues the ghost movie here. John Houseman, previous year The Fog, coming in for another ghost story. Then you have Fred Astaire, famous actor, dancer, and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. So you have names that are pretty heavy names, and like I'm saying, of course John Houseman and Melvin Douglas were in horror films before, just the year before. They kind of all these actors kind of seem to pick their kind of classy things here. Now, you could have filled this movie with actors who were A-listers at one point who became kind of B-listers, right? And went to Italy or went to some country and made a bunch of movies. And I'm not sure these guys ever did. I don't think they did. They don't really feel like it. But they kind of just put, you could have put John Ireland and Joseph Cotton in this movie. And I love those guys, but they don't. After you do, or Arthur Kennedy's, after you do so many of these movies, do you lose clout? I mean, maybe. I don't fucking know. But it just felt like there was a certain amount of class here, and you needed it for these actors. You needed to have the classy actors in here that have a reputation of maybe being just a little stuffy, but not always, not all of them either. But basically, this follows a story of 4 gentlemen in the Chowda Society. They get together and tell ghost stories. They're kind of the big parts of the society, pillars of the society. You have the mayor, the doctors, and lawyers, and they get together and they tell these ghost stories. And in the very beginning, Craig Watson, he sees this woman in bed. I actually should mention Alice Creed's in here too. Creed from Gretel and Hansel, and of course Sleepwalkers. She's great in this. So basically, there's this woman in bed, and he says, "Who are you?" And he's terrified. He falls out a window, falls to his death. And we learn that he has a twin brother, and that Dan and David, I believe is the name. And the twin brother has to go back to his small town where Douglas Fairbanks Jr. is his father. And he just knows something's off. He feels haunted by the whole situation, but no one will tell him anything. And these guys are hiding something clearly, And his father ends up dying under tragic circumstances, mysterious circumstances. And these guys don't want to say anything until somebody else dies. And that's kind of when Craig Watson walks in the Chowder Society and says, "I want to join. I want to tell a ghost story to join." And he tells what happened to him, and then we kind of learn who the person in his story is and how they got there and all this kind of stuff. The special effects are great. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Dick Smith did them. I'm pretty sure he did. Especially, the drowned character is amazing. And there's also these kind of 2 mentally ill people that escaped a mental institution. They're kind of running around doing the bidding of this haunting, this haunting, this ghost. But yeah, this is a really well-made movie. Like, it's just classy. I don't know how to go about it. Like, this is this year's Changeling. It's not as good as The Changeling, but it's on the caliber of something like that, where it's just well acted, well directed, good storytelling, just a classy ghost story, and I think it's done right. It's not, like I said, The Changeling is a better movie because George C. Scott is a powerhouse. And that movie, I just think, is just done better. But this is a good movie, and I was impressed with it. And when I was a kid, you're watching Ghost Story, like, this is boring when you're 10 years old. You lose interest. You want to see ghosts. You want to see, although some movies kept my attention, who knows why. This one did so much when I first saw it. But revisiting it for 81, yeah, I'm like, this is a really solid film with a good story, and it keeps you intrigued. I don't know how much playback value it has. Maybe it has a lot. Maybe it has a little. Listen to a little bit of the commentary of Jon Irvin, and he seems kind of like, I don't want to say Peter Greenaway, because on that commentary, he's a very educated man. Jon Irvin seems like he's interested in a lot, and he knows a lot, and he likes to learn. And he mentions wanting to do work more in this subgenre, right, of horror movies. And I like that. I really do. I appreciate that kind of stuff. So, Ghost Story. It's a good one. It's a Blu-ray from Screen Factory. You have audio commentary with the director, Jon Irvin. New interviews with author Peter Straub, actress Alan Creek, screenwriter Lawrence D. Cohen, producer Burt Weisbord, and matte photographer Bill Taylor. It's pretty cool. The matte photography looks really great. Although you can tell it's a matte painting. I like that. So yeah, Ghost Story. Check it out. I think you will not be disappointed if you like ghost stories. The next one up here from 1981 is Saturday the 14th. And this is directed by, Howard Cohen? And I believe that he had some sort of connection to Spin City. Second City, Spin City. Jesus. Second City with a lot of comedians and everything like that. Chicago area deal. This is produced by Roger Corman and Julie Corman. It's a New World Pictures. It's got to be New World Pictures at the time. And, this is a horror parody. It has people that you recognize like Jeffrey Tabor, Richard Benjamin, some other faces, of course. So, yeah, not the only horror comedy of the year. You got Full Moon High and a parody as well. And, of course, Student Bodies. I'm going to let you in on a secret here. I know people like Saturday the 14th, but I prefer Student Bodies a million times more, and I even prefer Full Moon High. I know that's probably blasphemy. So basically what we have here is Jeffrey Tambor and his wife of 211 years or 300 years are waiting to get this house because they're looking for an artifact in this book. This book is supposed to raise monsters. So basically this family inherits, this house after their aunt dies or their uncle, whoever it is. They inherit this house, and they're ready to move in, and right away the kid finds the book. He brings back a bunch of goofy monsters, and shenanigans ensue. The problem here is everybody plays it straight, which I think they should do, but they also play it incredibly dumb. Everybody's so dumb, but they're playing it straight. And you're not Leslie Nielsen. It's not going to work. I don't know. It's just doesn't work for me. And the monsters are goofy and zany. The tonal stuff is off. The humor doesn't work for me. I didn't laugh once. I appreciate that you have about 10 different monsters in the movie, but they're all really bad suits. Like, I'm seeing their eyes, like not their eyeballs. I'm seeing like this, like underneath their eye, their skin a lot. And one of the masks looks like the suit that they used in Ghoulies 2 when they try to get the big ghoulie to come out and eat the bomb. That's the suit. The bomb suit is what's in here at one point. I mean, like, it's just, there's a couple monsters that look great, and the rest are just crummy. But you're not really in it for the monsters, you're in it for the humor. Of course, Van Helsing shows up, and he's supposed to get the bats out of the belfry. Yeah, he's ridiculous, and I don't know what the fuck he's doing. He's not very funny. Jeffrey Tabor is a great actor. Doesn't have much to work with here, to be honest. I don't think anybody really does. Benjamin's in a lot of movies. I don't think the acting's poor. I think the script is poor. I think the gags are poor. Humor is very subjective, and this ain't funny to me. Didn't laugh once. Didn't find any humor in it. Felt like there's obviously some shout outs to certain movies and literature, and the subtitles are terrible. At one point he's like, the vampire couple is arguing, and he's like, and he's like, you can bring that Harker girl up again, are you? Obviously making reference to, Dracula, is it? Yeah, so the subtitles say hooker girl. It's like, so obviously who's doing the subtitles has no frame of reference for horror movies, period, or horror literature, whatever, man. It is what it is. It's done by AI system and not corrected. Someone, maybe, I don't know, but it's Saturday the 14th. I guess I'm lucky to get subtitles. Not a fan. It's not the worst thing ever, but I just did not find it funny. And if the comedy's not funny, it's not very good, right? So new interview with producer Julie Corman, which I enjoyed. She's cool. I mean, she fucking produced a million movies and is married to Roger Corman. How could she not be cool? Next up is a Patreon pick, and Jonathan Wilhelm said, pick any Vinegar Syndrome release that you haven't seen. So I decided to go with A Dark Tower from 1989, starring Jenny Agutter and, of course, Michael Moriarty. I feel like fucking Kevin McCarthy is in this bad boy. Am I missing anyone here? Theodore Bickle is really good as well, as Carol Lindley is in here too. So it's got a great cast, right? This is one of these movies where it's like Americans building these buildings, these skyscrapers in other people's countries. Happens to Beyond Evil from 1980 with John Saxon, right? It's like, I'm going to go here and help them build this place, yada, yada, yada. There's always that story, right? Like a rich architect or a hotshot architect is helping build these buildings in different countries. I think this one takes place in Spain. And Michael Moriarty is kind of like a company detective. He's hired by a company. Kevin McCarthy is kind of a weirdo, kind of occult guy, along with the Bickle, and they're friends, and they are called in for some obvious reasons towards the end of the movie. Jenny Agutter is the architect. Jenny Agutter is in American Werewolf in London. You guys would recognize her. So basically what we have here is, we have a haunting. So we're having these weird things happen in this tower. Right off the bat, a person falls off a scaffold while they're painting. One of those kind of ones that's like goes up and up. They fall. They seem to be committed suicide. It's very strange. But then we have a night watchman disappear, die in the elevator, and then a shooting, which is kind of really brutal and crazy. And all the while, Michael Moriarty's having these flashes and these incognitive weird shit going on. And Jenny Agutter seems terrified. So he starts to kind of push on her, and he brings in psychics, and you kind of learn the history and the past of what happened and who's doing it. And we learn that it's her husband. And we do find out why. It's an okay movie. It's an okay story, a mystery. Now, the shooting was pretty intense. The special effects aren't amazing. Towards the end, the ghost reveal, he looks really cool. I like that. The only interview on here is with the special effects artist, which is kind of sad because this movie had a really troubled production, from my understanding. Originally, Freddie Francis was directing this, and something happened where he dropped out, and Ken Wiederhorn took over. Ken Wiederhorn directed stuff like Eyes of a Stranger, Shockwaves, Return of the Living Dead Part 2. So it's really weird. I mean, Freddie Francis was one of the greatest cinematographers, doing stuff like The Innocents, and he, of course, directed Tales from the Crypt and a million other great films. Girly, Trog? He did Trog from 1970. But I'm just saying, like, it's strange, and, like, there's no features on here, which kind of bums me out. Picture quality looks great and sounds great. It is a low-budget horror film. It's okay. I didn't hate it. I'm glad I got to watch it. But they put the directed by Ken Barnett, which is kind of a pseudonym, obviously, and a mixture of two directors. But Vinegar Syndrome did a good job with it. It's just not the best movie, but it's solid. And Michael Moriarty is a very bizarre actor, and I always like what he does, man. He's in a lot of the Larry Cohen stuff, like The Stuff, and Q the Winged Serpent, and It's Alive 3. He's in everything. Return to Salem's Lot. Very good actor, very different actor for sure. But this is Dark Tower. There we go. Jim Van Beber. Brilliant as expected. I love your updating of the 80s horror film retrospective. In a perfect world, you'd be able to throw in all the fantastic bush shots from the ladies like the initiation, etc., etc. I mean, yeah. I mean, like, honestly, YouTube does not like anything. Like, I got in trouble for The Devil's Honey. If you can mark it like adult, there's like straight up porn on here. And then, like, you show like a boob or something, or like a dick, and then you're done. Samurai Otato Animations. That wall of movies scare me. Why? Pop Culture Massacre. Dig the stash, Dave. Thank you. Dylan Johnson, is 22 Shots coming back? No idea. Eddie Daniels, another great update. I've been watching you for years now, and you're still one of my most engaging people on YouTube. You look great, especially in a tank top. Just a little flex over there. Thank you. Jimmy the Lip 2.0, Killer Stash, Mrparka, Dirty Cop No Donut. If you ever watched the CGI, that movie, I meant the movie with the commentary, Joel D. Wynkoop carries this gag on where he's like, that's not me, it's CGI. It's the funniest gag I've ever heard. Nick Mua, I second the stash. I'm getting Frank Zappa vibes. Thank you. Zach Nolan, hope to see the Haunting of Julie review soon. I asked about that years ago, but I know you like it better when movies get the Blu-ray treatment. One of my absolute favorites. Yeah, I definitely want to check it out. Nick Mua, loved The Seventh Seal when I first saw it years ago. Your review made me appreciate it all the more. I heard there's a new release featuring a Kat Ellinger commentary. I'll have to look into that. Questions. Would you agree that there's some similarities between The Seventh Seal and Roger Corman's Mask of the Red Death? Allegedly, Mr. Bergman drew at least some inspiration from the post-short story. I mean, there is, right? It involves death, and your time's up, right? You're going to have a game with death. I do think there is a similarity, and there's the plague going on through the whole entire thing. Yeah, I mean, I imagine the Seventh Seal. Poe is one of the most influential writers of all time. He's the most influential horror writer of all time. What would you do if you encountered the Grim Reaper? Die. Do you feel the Hollywood writers are doing the right thing by striking? Listen, I'm not a Hollywood writer. I don't live in Hollywood. I don't have any insider information for you, so I don't fucking know. But hey, if you got a union and you don't think you're being treated well, for the reasoning they have, yeah, I mean that makes sense. If they literally think AI is going to take away all their jobs and all their art and just recreate it, I can understand why they would strike. But again, I'm not in Hollywood. I don't know. I don't have any of the information. I don't know their fucking contract. I don't know what they offered them. You know what I mean? That's such a weird question. It's like everybody has an opinion on it, but they don't have any of the details. I mean, I don't have all the details either, so I don't really. I mean, if you want to strike, they'll strike. I mean, they just took a union vote, and I mean, I voted no on our contract, but you know, it is what it is. You know. Till next week, will you grow a Fu Manchu stash eventually? No. Unless I get paid for it. Ken Coakley. I saw The Seven Seals, a double feature with Harold and Maude, at a cemetery. The cemetery is where my grandfather and uncle I was very close to are buried. The screen was set up in a large grassy area. I saw on a small ledge and my back was against the tombstone. That made me feel real kind of guilty. As for the film, it kind of works as a horror film. Death comes across as a ghost or demon. Also, the iconic Dance of the Dead was eerie. I didn't take the film as a swipe against Christianity, but again, I haven't seen it in some time. As a Christian, I also have thick skin. I mean, you gotta have thick skin nowadays. My second favorite Bergman was The Virgin Spring, which was remade as Last House on the Left. The Virgin Spring was also the more disturbing because a young boy was involved, and the father of the murdered girl had to delay his revenge because he was trying to decide whether or not to kill the boy. It's pretty rough. Here's a wild. It reminds me of Bad Lieutenant, right? When Keitel catches those guys, they're pretty young, but that whole part's pretty insane. Here's a wild fact: Max von Sydow played Jesus in The Greatest Story Ever Told, a priest in The Exorcist and The Exorcist II, The Heretic, and played the devil in Needful Things. He was also a self-avowed atheist. Oh, okay. When filming The Greatest Story Ever Told, Jamie Farr, who played Thaddeus, was getting married in a nearby church. Most of the cast attended, including Sydow. They had to wear their costumes because they were on break. The pastor was shaking. Farr asked the pastor if he's okay. The pastor nodded to Sydow, dressed as Jesus, and said, "I'm fine. I just never had to work in front of the boss before. Wasted time to control shop. What game would you ask Death to play?" WWF No Mercy for Nintendo 64. I think I can take Death in that. Collectivist TV, Dave. Have you seen the Planet CHS video covering the history behind Return of the Living Dead and Necropolis? No, I should watch that because I'm interested in those movies, why they suck so bad. And I don't think it was even the writers or directors of those movies because the writer probably didn't even make what it was. I think it's like a producer. Way up, dude. First, face, blue smiling face, blue smiling face. Okay. Robert Purdholm Jr. I'm a huge fan of the Boogans. I also have the VHS. The lead actress Rebecca Balding also did Silent Scream. They mentioned that in the commentary a few years back. She had a couple of cool horror gems in her early career. Unfortunately, she just passed away last July. That's sad. R.I.P. Dan the Cameraman. Dave, I have two questions. Please answer truthfully. Have you ever considered making videos at ASMR with your sexy voice? Absolutely not. Are you a fan of SawCon? I don't know what SawCon is. Didn't look it up. Sorry. Ken Coakley. I like the Boogans, but they should have given the film another title. Back in the early 80s, a stand-up comedian did a bit about the film. He said he would try to pay someone to get his ticket because he was too embarrassed to say the Boogans. It sounds too much like the Boogers. A fair warning to fellow animal lovers out there. A dog gets killed. That pissed me off. I still give it an A-. The dog's death affected the score. As for Shanghai Joe, spaghetti western regular Piero Louis was part of the cast. He also co-starred in The Forgotten Pistolero, a film I strongly recommend. One last thing. I like the porn star mustache. LOL, it looks good on you. I couldn't let that go by. My brother said the same thing to me when I had one. Thank you. And you take care, Ken. Yeah, I don't really have any stuff to show in an update because, like I said, breaks, $1,200. You're not buying DVDs. But I do have some stuff coming probably at the end of the month from Vinegar Syndrome, and then I'll probably grab a couple here and there. Work is picking up, and so it is what it is. So you guys take care. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.